We are Wooden Spoon Wargaming and welcome to the channel.
With your host, Unprofessional Hobbyist.
We can be found across varying social media platforms here on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook and our own website www.woodenspoonwargaming.com. Time zone appropriate greeting to you and welcome to the channel. Today I am honoured to be joined by Joe, also known as Chaos Lord Beard, Lady Beard, Bat Beard, and allegedly El Beardo. Welcome, Joe.
Hello. Thanks for using my real name first. That's very kind. Most people don't do that. El Beardo is not here today.
No,
he's out seeking whatever he seeks. He's a strange man.
Okay, this is our community spotlight section, and this one we will be answering a few questions which I normally ask people, and then I've got a few select questions which are aimed towards yourself.
Okay.
So, how did you get started in tabletop wargaming?
Well, good question. I suppose I was involved with it when I was much younger. So when I was I don't know, maybe around 10, 11, 12 years old, some friends of mine were into Warhammer Fantasy back then. So I got involved by collecting Bretonians, which I miss dearly. I do have one or two of them still knocking about at my mum and dad's place. They're sort of proudly on a shelf, looking a little bit worse for wear and a little bit bent because they're all made of lead, but that's how I first got into it. I sort of muddled my way through other games like Gorka Morka, and I've still got some of those ancient static Gretchens that everyone knows and loves.
Small guns like that.
Those ones, yeah. I can't actually remember how long I was involved for. It seems like quite a distant memory, but in terms of more recent times, Lawrence, who's the big boss of our channel, he got me involved. We actually met at work, and over a couple of beers we talked about what we used to do for work, and he said that he worked at Games Workshop, and that got my ears pricked up. I was like, oh, that sounds cool, I remember that. What was it like to work there? And he regaled me of tales of working at Games Workshop, and then on from there, he sort of brought up to people what he was doing with the hobby at that moment, which was not a huge amount. This is before the channel started. And we decided later on to go to a Games Workshop in Covent Garden, strangely enough, where Chef was working at the time. That's the first time I met him. And I bought a box of Chaos Space Marines, and the rest, I guess, is history. I kind of got brought back in because I always had fond memories of it. I like all the artwork on the models and things like that. I hadn't played the game properly at all at that point, but he sort of brought me back in because I'd seen all of the up-to-date, well, at that point, up-to-date miniatures, which got me excited again. So I got a box of Chaos Space Marines. I built them in the store with Florence and Chef, and they were teaching me how to use scalpels and how much glue to use, which I got wrong the first time. And then from there I just started building a collection, and then I don't know, maybe 6 months after that, I happened to be in the first video that was made for Tabletop Tactics, and the rest is history after that point, I suppose.
What type of hobbyist are you? A painter, collector, gamer, or a bit of a mix?
I guess by default a bit of a mix. I enjoy the hobbying aspect a lot. I find painting very therapeutic, unless it's batch painting, which is kind of has the opposite effect sometimes. But in terms of building and converting models, that's probably my favourite part. I get a lot of pleasure in making models that don't currently exist. Like my Iron Warriors, for instance, almost everything's converted apart from the troops. It makes it feel like it's my army rather than my own paint scheme on an army that already exists, if that makes sense. But the gaming aspects I kind of brought into by default. I do really enjoy the game a lot. I love playing with the guys on the channel. I haven't played competitively in a while in terms of going to tournaments and things, just because of life getting in the way and having a baby and that kind of thing. But I'm sure I'll get into that at some point when the world goes back to relative normality, I guess. But I love all of it. I love the whole lot. I love like library novels. I love painting, converting, building, playing, talking about it, boring people that don't understand the hobby about it. Yeah, love it to pieces. It's amazing.
Okay. What game systems do you play? Are you simply a one-person system, or recently we've seen you stretching out with your Skaven again? Are you a two-person system?
Skaven. Those Skaven have been sat on a shelf for, I think, 2 years now. They're still not finished. They're nearly finished. My troops are done. I've got a lot of artillery pieces that are nearly finished. The army's pretty much ready to go. I've played Sigmar once, and this was a couple of years ago. We actually, everyone that has asked about Sigmar on our channel in the past, we have released one game of Sigmar. This was 2 years ago, or maybe 3 years ago, and it was really bad. But we are going to do Sigmar at some point, and at that point I'll learn how to play. But at the moment, the only system I sort of know how to play really is 40k. I'm very interested in getting into other systems, like some of the smaller games like Necromunda. I love the look of Warcry, Blackstone Fortress. Most of my time is taking up with filming content for the channel. So in terms of free time for doing other stuff, it is quite limited. But I'm very excited to do Sigmar, and I'm very keen at some point to do some kind of Necromunda campaign of some description and sort of get into the narrative side of it for sure.
So when you were first starting out with Chef and Lawrence in the Games Workshop, what was the first thing that caught your eye?
What, in the shop?
Yeah, what made you perhaps pick the Chaos Space Marines instead of like the Ultramarines or the Eldar? Or
well, I think in real life I'm probably a good guy. So I think in my made up 40k fantasy life, I thought I should be the bad guys. I like Chaos Space. I like Space Marines. I like power armor and things like that. But I didn't want to be the good guys in this game. So I did a little bit of research into Chaos and sort of learnt a bit about the lore and the history about it, and it really grabbed me. I wasn't super into the Xenos stuff at that point because it didn't seem quite as characterful. A lot of the like the stories and the novels and things like that, they go into a huge amount of details about different characters and what they've done and all the amazing like adventures and crusades they've been on. So it was nice to be able to associate models with those things. But things like Tyranids, for instance, which is like a bunch of monsters, they don't really have a huge amount of personality to them. They're very cool, but I wanted to get a bit more into the narrative side of it, and that's something I've always really liked about the hobby is the storytelling and the narrative. So I kind of figured as a way to be a bad guy, but also to have some interesting narrative and character to the models. At the time, Chaos made sense, and also Laurie told me that they're very easy to paint, so that was partially some of the reason why I chose Iron.
Okay. What advice would you give someone just starting out on the hobby, or maybe going back in the past yourself?
I think it depends what they're looking to get into it for, really. I think anyone that sort of looks at it from afar and has any kind of interest into it, there's something for everyone. Whether it's listening to audiobooks or getting a box of something and painting them up and building them. If you've got any interest at all, give it a try and see what you think. The big thing that I always find to be really outstanding is the community. I think in the past there was probably certainly from an outsider's perspective that it was a bit of a strange thing to be involved with, I suppose, especially if you were over a certain age. But these days, like the way the Games Workshop's gone with expanding like Warhammer community and with the internet coming in and Instagram and YouTube and all that kind of stuff, it's become incredibly accessible, and it's really, really good to see how solid and supportive the community is for the most part. So if you're interested in anything, there's going to be someone else out there that's interested in it as well, and most people will talk your socks off about any aspect that they're interested in. So if anyone sends me a message on Instagram about how should I go about converting this, I will send them novels worth of advice and things like that, and there'll be someone out there that will do similar things with painting or tactics in games, or what's the best character to use with this army or whatever. So yeah, the anything that you're interested in, just give it a go, and also do your best to reach out to the community and see what's out there for other people that can kind of guide you through it, and other people that you can enjoy it with as well.
So I think that's what everyone's answer at the moment is. The best thing about the hobby at the moment is the community. It's becoming less and less toxic as it was a few years ago. Games Workshop are now reaching out. But on the other side, what is the worst part of the hobby for you?
The worst part?
Yeah, what things could be improved, do you think?
That's a really good question. I don't think there's anything that's glaringly bad. I think maybe, and we've seen this in the recent edition of 40k, maybe sort of a slightly less complicated system might stop some people from being put off. It's certainly better than it was. I mean, when 8th edition came around, it really did simplify it quite a lot, and it's continuing to go that way. I think that okay, let me rephrase that. Less that it's complicated, more that it's a very bulky system at the moment. There's lots of things in place that sometimes make games very long, and there's also some issues with disparities between armies and how competitive they can be. So if you're like me and you just get an army because you think it looks good, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to do you well in games. So if you want to kind of combine both aspects of the hobby, where you enjoy building and painting and also gaming, if you're someone that likes Genestealer Cult, for instance, and you spend about 37 years making your army because it's enormous, you play your first game against Raven Guards and you get annihilated in 2 turns, it's going to be a bit gutting. So I think there's certainly some balance issues that need to be resolved. Also, probably, and I don't know how this might go, but definitely there's for some people there are going to be some issues in terms of the cost involved with the hobby. I mean, going from our perspective with the channel, the amount that we have to spend on books to have all of the rules available to us, when really they probably could be released as PDFs. Again, Games Workshop is a business and they've got money to make and things like that, but when you sort of put it all together, when you've got your hobbying tools and your paint and your models and your books and new rules when they come out, it can be a bit overwhelming in terms of the potential cost factor. So I think there's maybe some things that can be done about extra cost when it comes to things like rule books, but that remains to be seen. But for the most part, I don't think there's any, for me anyway, there's nothing that's like really that's a horrible part of the hobby. You get the occasional person you meet every now and again that does make you question why they're in the hobby, but for the most part, 99% of people I've ever talked to are amazing. So that's definitely a positive.
Okay, so what keeps you in the hobby? What keeps your mojo going?
The channel. Definitely. That's one thing with the community. The only reason we've gone as far as we have is because of the people out there that watch what we make and give us feedback and enjoy it or not enjoy it and tell us how to do it differently. It's grown exponentially over the last few years, and the only reason that we are able to do what we do is because of everyone that's involved. So that definitely plays a huge part. I find that the hobbying aspect of it really helps me in terms of things like mental health. So painting and modelling, just sitting at my desk and having a few hours to myself every now and again is massively important for me. It's very meditative, and it just allows me to be in my own little bubble for a few hours and forget the rest of the world, have an audiobook on and just remove myself from reality for a couple of hours before it then comes back with a big crash. So yeah, there's many aspects that keep me in it. I don't see a point in the future where I'm not involved in some aspect. I think certainly for most people I've spoken to, there's that definite, I used to play it as a kid, then I stopped for a while, and now I'm back into it again. Most people seem to have that gap, but I think for certain age groups, and I think this is expanding as time goes on, I think that gap in the middle tends to be much smaller these days. There's something out there for everyone that can keep you involved in some way.
Yeah, yeah. So personally speaking as well, I work away a lot on projects as an engineer, so I maybe have 4 games a year maximum. Last year was more because I went to the SN Battle Reports GT, so that like doubled my amount of games. So obviously, your channel, the content you produce, and it is ramping up so much. You get 4 or 5 releases a week now, isn't it? So it is so great. It's thanks so much from the community for putting the effort in. And there are funny moments when like you turn around and you're like, oh dear, poor Beard.
There's plenty of those, yeah. No, we all love it. I'll speak for the rest of the guys. We absolutely adore what we do. It's so much fun. It's hard work. It is hard work sometimes. A 2 or 3 hour battle report doesn't take 2 or 3 hours to make. It's like a day or more sometimes. So we do put the work in, and it can be tough sometimes, but most of it is super fun. Yeah. It's a very enjoyable way to make a living.
So how do you deal with like a burnout period, or just lack of motivation to get painting, or?
I'm having one of those at the moment. So on my desk right now, I've got how many here? 30 Hormigants, 10 Gargoyles, and a Trigon Prime. And unfortunately, with this colour scheme, this High Fleet Myrmidon, which is our studio army, when we first started it, Rhinox Hide came in a can, and it doesn't anymore. So I've had to spray them all black and then do 2 coats of Rhinox Hide before I even start the highlights. So I'm in the burnout stage at the moment. However, my advice to people that are going through the same sorts of things: just step away for a bit. If you're not enjoying it, then you're not doing it right, or it's become too much. I kind of, with my painting, I try and come up with different strategies to keep it a bit fresher. But at this point, when I'm looking at about 45 models that are just brown, it's difficult to really enjoy it as much as I was on model 3 that I am in model 27. So sometimes you need to take a break, do something different, go for a walk, speak to the humans at home if there are any, or give someone a call, speak to someone going through a similar thing, play some games, watch some TV, and then come back once you really feel like you want to get back into it again. I went through a stage of really rushing through stuff through frustration, and the results weren't very good. So if it's not fun, step away and come back to it another time.
Okay. Has anyone inspired your hobby life?
Oh man, yeah, loads. The biggest inspiration bucket I've got is Instagram. So as a keen hobbyist, all of my ideas essentially are stolen from other people on Instagram. So whether it's color schemes or conversion ideas, or paint schemes or paint techniques, things to get like I've got a wet palette that I was introduced to by someone on Instagram, and it's completely changed how I paint. It's amazing. Instagram is massive. I don't tend to look too deeply for any like gaming based stuff, because I get enough of that from the guys in the studio. But yeah, certainly from the hobbying aspect, there is an enormous amount of really talented people out there. A big recommendation I have, as anyone that doesn't follow them already, is the guys that do Iron Sleet. You can see them on Instagram. It is very, very focused around the whole grimdark aspect of the hobby. So it kind of harks back to much older artwork and things like that from when I was younger. So it really speaks to me in terms of like inspiring pieces of work. Everything's really dark and gritty looking. Excuse me. So yeah, having a flick through Instagram every now and again completely recharges my batteries and helps me come up with new ideas for stuff. It's fantastic.
Okay. Do you plan out armies, projects, or do you just get sucked in buying the new latest hotness?
Latest hotness, not so much, because I tend to find that I'm quite late to the party with what's good in the game. I tend to go by what I like the look of, rather than how they perform in the game most of the time. However, that is changing a bit now, and I am being a bit more savvy in terms of my purchases because it's getting a bit out of control. I have my Iron Warriors, which is my main army. I just add stuff to as much as I can. I do most of my conversions for the Iron Warriors. At the moment, for instance, I've kind of scratch built some rapier battery squads from different kits, and that's kind of rejuvenated that army for me because it's something completely new and a competitive unit in the game as well. At the moment, they're really good. In terms of my other armies, Deathwatch, I am doing more of a troops based army for that. I'm magnetizing them as well. What else do I have? Oh, Sister of the Battle's kind of on hold for a while now because we're doing a studio army. But I'm being... Yeah, in the past I tend to sort of get whatever I thought looked really cool. These days I'm being a bit more strategic in units I'm going to get that can help me in games, because my army's getting quite big. So now I want things I add to be effective in games. Certainly not becoming a hardcore gamer by any means, because that's not how I like to play. But I try and plan out more than I did in the past. Certainly, it's definitely done me some favors in recent additions to the armies for sure.
If your budget was unlimited, but you could only buy one army, what would it be?
Oh dear. If my budget was unlimited, that's a really good question. I think maybe I might do an enormous and very bright and colourful demons army. So all 4 gods. So Khorne, Nurgle, Tzeentch, and Slaanesh. 1 billion troops. All of the massive monsters. Convert everything. That would be really fun. I really, really want to do a Tzeentch demon army next. But having all 4 of them together in an enormous... I imagine a warp storm and all the demons coming out. That's what I'd love to do as my next army. That would be really fun. That's cool. Really, really fun.
What do you hope to improve about your hobbying in the future?
Painting, definitely painting. I've massively got into painting in the last 6 months. Up until that point, it had just been about getting stuff made as quickly as possible and painting stuff as quickly as possible to have more armies available for the channel. So I had a Space Wolf army, which I was super disappointed with because I got them done very quickly to get them on the channel, but I never liked how they looked. So these days I spend a lot more time sort of looking at tutorials and improving the way I paint, getting the right equipment. I've got a daylight lamp now, which has helped a lot. I don't know how I painted without a daylight lamp in the past. It's like doing it with your eyes closed. It's mad. Getting some better brushes, having a wet palette, things like that, learning a little bit of colour theory. You don't need to buy your way into being a good painter, but having the right tools definitely helps a bit. Spending more time on things like glazing on skin, spending more time on faces and stuff. It just helps make everything look much more characterful. It's amazing how much putting a little set of eyes on a Space Marine can completely bring them to life, whereas before I just used Agrax Earthshade to make them look like they had a shadow on unsuccessfully. Learning a new skill like that has been really, really fun, and the results have been much better so far.
That's brilliant. That's a brilliant answer. So this is now part 2 of the interview, where we'll go from the standard questions to more select questions, which I tailor towards everyone else.
Oh.
So, as one of the founder members of Tabletop Tactics, links below. I don't know why I'm pointing, but...
I'll point too.
Yeah, sure. How did it get started? How did it go from talking to playing on Lawrence's kitchen tabletop and filming it?
I don't actually know. I can't remember. Okay, I can remember a bit. I can't remember the time when Lawrence said to me, why don't I'm going to start a YouTube channel about Warhammer. Do you want to be on the first episode? I don't remember that at all. I think actually when we first met, I think he'd already started planning something. I seem to remember that we took a lot of inspiration from Striking Scorpion when we first started, because he was the guy that was like the guy on YouTube at that point. So I think we sort of based a few ideas around him. But in terms of when we did, I don't know, because it felt like it took a really, really long time for me to get to 1,500 points of Iron Warriors. So there must have been some talks in between that point where I had 0 models to 1,500 points worth. I remember the first video we filmed, and realizing very quickly I had absolutely no idea how to play the game. He was filming and narrating. I was looking around the board wondering what a Dark Eldar was. I was wondering why he had so many more models than I did. I was wondering why I was getting so badly beaten. But it was a lot of fun. We really enjoyed making that. The next one we played, the next one we filmed, I was playing against our friend Liam, and Lawrence was filming separately. And I think that might have been the point where we both thought, or he certainly thought, this could be a thing that could grow. Allowing him to be behind the camera and narrating and commentating for a whole game was very, very different to the first one, where he was figuring out how to film and play and narrate at the same time, which is still quite hard actually. But when you have a separate presenter, that does change things. So I think that was probably the point where we realised that we might be onto something.
Okay.
God, that seems like such a long time ago.
So what's been the most enjoyable part of being part of the channel from because you've been there since day one to day now, it must be 5 years, I believe.
Yeah, about that. Yeah. The most enjoyable part for me, well, there's probably a few things. Meeting Lawrence was great. Getting to know, making new friends really, with Ben and Rob and Chef. That's been huge, because I didn't know any of them at all before I met Lawrence. This has all happened by chance. Well, I at the same time that we started working together, I also moved to London, so the chances of us ever meeting were incredibly slim, and the chances of this growing into what it is today is I'd love to know the math behind it, but I don't. Anyway, getting to know those guys was amazing, and just finding a hobby that I truly enjoy doing all the time is fantastic. Like when you find a way to really maximize your free time and get a lot out of it, that's something quite special, and being able to do that on a very, very regular basis for me is fantastic. Unfortunately, the other guys all live down in Bath now, so I'm a bit further away, so can't be there all the time, but that may change in the future. And for what I am able to do at this point, I absolutely adore it. So yeah, just getting to know them and having the channel grow to what it has done today, and sort of seeing it happen over the years, it's been fantastic.
Have you ever felt that being involved in a channel like this may affect your enjoyment in the hobby? I don't really have a comparison, because the hobby has always been alongside the channel. So apart from thinking back to when I was playing as a kid, I don't really have a comparable time where I was doing them separately. I think maybe I think if I was to have got into it differently, I think maybe I would have got into the gaming side of it to a higher level and would have focused more on playing the game successfully rather than all of the other bits. I think naturally when you're presenting something, you tend to need to act in a certain way where you can appeal to different people, I guess. So I've never really
I've never really been able to sort of be one thing or the other. I've tended to need to pander to different audiences, I suppose. So I think in some ways my hobby is very neutral. I sort of don't do one thing more than the others necessarily. So yeah, I don't really have a time where I was doing them separately. So it's a very long-winded way of saying I don't know.
Okay. You have such a wide range of beautiful studio armies to use from. Have you ever, after using one, considered starting your own force?
Yes, I really enjoy using our Talon army, and it's made me question whether or not I'd like to get my own Guard army at some point. There's an awful lot of flavour with Imperial Guard, I think, and the different factions there, where you've got the Voisterans and the Valhallans and the Talon and the Cadians. Cadians, I don't know if they're there anymore, but they're very flavourful, and it's definitely tempted me. Although more recently, an army that I haven't been playing, which is Demons, that's really got me thinking, because I constantly see the Demons on a very far away shelf that you never really see when we're filming our games, and they're gathering dust a bit because none of them are full armies at the moment. So that more than playing has got me really interested in doing Demons at some point.
Okay. Obviously, you are well known for your Iron Warriors army. If you were a warpsmith and could create your own demon engine, what would it be like?
That's a cool question. What would it be like? I think. Well, I like stuff with legs. So tanks with legs, I really like. I actually made. It's not something you see very often on the channel because it's nonsense. But I made my own. Oh goodness, what's it called? Oh no, it's a Forge World model. Anyway, it's a big walking thing. The actual model is described as a infantry model, but I've made it like a giant walking spider platform of death.
Oh, the Abeyant.
The Dark Abeyant, thank you. Yes, the Dark Abeyant. There isn't a model currently, so I took it upon myself to make something appropriate and failed miserably because I got carried away. But essentially, it's Doomcrawler legs with a Dark Mechanicum platform which the Warpsmith sits on. So some kind of walking nightmare monstrosity with silly guns that do massive explosions. That sort of thing's right up my street. And anything that looks very, very grimdark, loads of cables, it looks like it shouldn't work, but there's a very dangerous end to it where all the explosions come out of. So something like that, a big walking scary nightmare.
So have you ever been recognised in like a non-gaming environment, say like walking down the street or in the supermarket, and someone's gone, "Beard, I love you"?
Yeah, not probably for about 12 to 18 months, strangely, but there was a time where I got recognised 3 times in about 2 months. I found it very weird. I was on my commute to work, and a guy sort of jumped off the train with me at my stop. And he was like, "Hey, you're the Beard, right?" And I was like, "What?" Because I had my headphones in. I find it very strange. He was a doctor at a hospital nearby, and he was talking about the games he enjoyed watching and things. I found it very, very odd. I didn't really know what to say. It's very, very flattering and amazing. I always enjoy meeting fans of the channel or just people that are into the hobby. But when it's on completely neutral ground and it's not an event or anything like that, it's weird. I don't know what to say. I try and change the subject, but it's nice. It is nice, but it's not happened for a little while. Probably because I shaved my beard off. That might be why.
Sure. Final question. Why do you roll so many ones at the worst possible time?
I wish I had an answer for you, but I really don't know. I feel like recently it's not been as bad, but the weirdest thing is I always know at crucial moments when I'm going to do it. I always know it's going to happen, so it must be something that I make happen subconsciously. If there's ever a roll that's really important, or someone said, "Oh, you're going to roll a 1," any time like that where it's important and I need to do anything but a 1. That's mainly the one. If anyone says you need to do anything but a 1, it's always a 1. I really can't explain why. It's yeah, I wish it wasn't my thing, because it's never good in games unless you're doing a morale check. But yeah, it's a very, very, very strange skill I wish I didn't have.
Yeah, I've seen recently, like, playing games myself, and on other channels, it's like, as soon as you roll a 1, and you say command point reroll, that's the curse. That's the absolute curse, because you'll always roll a 1.
Yeah,
again.
You can't fix it. Once the dice have been rolled and it's a 1, the gods have spoken, and you're doomed.
Okay, Joe, thank you very much for giving me your time for this interview.
Thank you for having me. It's been great.
It's been great. Thank you very much. I'm honoured to have you here, and hopefully people have enjoyed this quick chit chat.
Hope so.
Okay, and that's a wrap.
Thank you very much.
So a massive thanks to Joe for taking part in this interview with me and filling in more of our community spotlight section. There are a few more interviews here on YouTube in the community spotlight playlist, and then also on our website www.woodenspoonwargaming.com. There's a community spotlight tab where there is now 12 more interviews, where it's not in an audio format but in a written format with some photos from various people from Instagram, which you'll recognise, because I generally want to spread the hobby love, as people say. So if you enjoy this, please like, comment, sub, all are very much appreciated. Take care and stay safe.